Well, what to make of the complete mess that is the Middle East right now? As President Trump is about to take office on January 20th, warmongers are certainly circling in Washington, D.C. Do they have sway over the president? Will the president support a war against Iran, or will cooler heads prevail? What of Russia in this position now that Syria is out of the picture? Talk about an absolute hornet's nest. There's one man that we thought we'd ask about this hornet's nest to try to help make sense of it all, and that is former UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter, who knows all too well the propaganda and the lies that have been used to lead us into massive wars in Iraq. Of course, he tried to warn all of us and could have saved millions of lives if people in Washington, D.C. had actually listened to him. Are we about to repeat that same problem? Scott Ritter joins us now. Scott, good to see you. Welcome. I know trying to make sense of all of this craziness is not easy, but thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So when you look over the past 48 hours, now that the mainstream media seems aligning around this idea that, now that Assad is out of the picture, the fall of Syria is now off the table. Guess what's next? Of course, Iran. That seems to be the next move. You're hearing from members of Congress that is the next sort of pillar to fall. Netanyahu, it seems, would love nothing more for that to be the case. How do you see this unfolding? How do you see President Trump's alignment with this? Do you think he'll put his foot down and say, no, we're not going to bomb Iran? He was asked that yesterday, by the way, at a press conference. Will you carry out preemptive strikes? And he sort of mocked the reporter for asking such a stupid question. But is this something that's actually being worked on behind the scenes right now?
Well, there's no doubt that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with the most pro-Israel, Zionist supporting cabinet and coterie of advisors of any presidency. It even exceeds that of the Biden presidency, which is famous for having a Secretary of State who said, "I am a Zionist." I guess Biden admitted to being a Zionist as well. But the point is, it doesn't matter who you surround yourself with. You have to deal with the realities that the world presents to you at the time you become president. And a month ago, there was a completely different reality in terms of how people assess the Middle East. The Netanyahu government, this far right-wing government, which people need to remember is only there because I think there were 4 elections where Netanyahu's government collapsed previously, and this seemed to be his last gasp of political relevance. And it was on the ropes. And if this government collapsed, Netanyahu probably wasn't coming back from this, and he was probably looking at a trial, corruption charges, disgrace, etc. And that would have been the Israel that Donald Trump would have inherited. And then the Zionists he surrounded himself with becomes sort of the equivalent of all the king's horses and all the king's men trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, because that would have been what Israel was, this failed and failing entity that couldn't defeat Hamas, couldn't defeat Hezbollah. The axis of resistance had, backed into a corner. Today, it's as if you went to sleep and you woke up and you're in a completely alternative universe. That's how quickly this has unfolded. Hamas is still putting up heroic resistance, but now they're doing so without the benefit of that which facilitated, their resilience. Hezbollah, there's a ceasefire. Hezbollah has not only, entered into a ceasefire, ceasing military operations on Israel's northern front, but the lifeline that Hezbollah had to Iran has been severed because of the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government. That puts a completely different spin on not just the present-day reality of Hezbollah, but its future potential. There's a power vacuum now created by the collapse of the Assad regime. That used to be, where the Russians had a foothold in the Middle East. The Iranians had a foothold. No one was talking about, Bashar al-Assad's regime. They just spoke of Syria as a facilitator of this axis of resistance. But now the regime is gone, and the Russians are, converting their presence from one of preventing Syria from becoming a bastion of terrorism, to, oh yeah, we can use our ports, we can use this port and this airfield to deliver humanitarian goods. So now Russia's in the rebuilding of Syria phase, which required Vladimir Putin to make an amazing, show some gymnastics, buying into the notion that this entity called HTS, Hayat Tahrir Sham, something of that nature. I'm very bad with words, but which prior to that was Al Nusra Front, which prior to that had components of ISIS and Al Qaeda. These are head choppers. These are the world's worst terrorists. They do horrible things and they have done horrible things. And even Vladimir Putin is saying, no, they're reformed, meaning that he's had to make some sort of intellectual leap here to get over the fact that which his military was deployed to Syria to prevent from taking over Syria has now taken over Syria. These are the guys that he was preventing. They're there now, and he's saying that's okay. They've reformed. So even Russia right now is struggling to come up with an explanation of what happened and where they're going. Iran is, of course, Iran is not defeated. Iran has not suffered a crushing military defeat or any additional economic harm, but its posture in the region has been affected here because the axis of resistance was this real thing that had manifested in an ability to bring Israel nearly to its knees. I mean, the combination of Ansarallah, the Houthi, bringing on this economic blockade from the south, this shutting down the port of Eilat, bankrupting Israel, Hezbollah, again facilitated by a lifeline through Syria, able to drive out 60,000 plus Israeli civilians from their neighborhoods in the north, making them internally displaced persons at great expense, both fiscally and politically. This was a political nightmare for Netanyahu. And then Hamas has continued. The courage and resilience of the Hamas fighters is unbelievable, but it's come at a horrible cost. The active genocide that Israel's waged against the people of Gaza, but that genocide is what woke the world up to the disease that is Zionism. I mean, it exposed Israel for what it is. But look, in the last, since December 8th, what are we, 10 days past that now? Israel's bombing Gaza every day and killing dozens of children and innocent civilians and hundreds on some days. No one's talking about that. That's not on the headlines anymore. It's all about Syria. This was the danger that Hassan Nasrallah warned about when people were saying, why doesn't Hezbollah intervene more decisively? And the answer is because this is about Gaza. This is about Hamas's struggle. This is about Palestine. It can't be about something else because then people will forget about Palestine as they are wont to do. It's the same thing with the Iranians. Everybody's saying we need True Promise 3. Well, the problem with True Promise 3 is it creates a general war between Israel and Iran that, again, takes the focus away from where it needs to be, on Gaza, on the Israeli genocide. It now becomes about a battle of energy security for the world, and the Palestinian people will be forgotten, as they are right now, forgotten. Literally abandoned yet again by a world that apparently has a short attention span. But now we come to Iran. Donald Trump, when he was in president, we have to remember this. This isn't his first go round. This is the second time in. So
right.
his philosophies that he had in the first term carry over. And remember, this is a man who withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. Called it a bad deal. He said that deal helps facilitate an Iranian nuclear weapons program. And what has happened since his withdrawal is that the European Union hasn't complied with its obligations. And so Iran invoked the paragraphs of the agreement that allow it to begin stopping to do that which it is compelled to do as long as the agreement's in play. And so they started stockpiling more uranium hexafluoride, UF6. They began to enrich it to 20%, And then they began to enrich it to 60%. The purpose of the JCPOA was to create a 1-year breakout window for Iran's nuclear to build a nuclear weapon. That means that with the JCPOA in place, fully functioning, if Iran decided we're going to kick the inspectors out and move towards making a weapon, it would take them a year to build up centrifuge capacity, the stockpile of enriched uranium, et cetera. Today, thanks to Donald Trump, and thanks to international events, especially what's going on in Gaza, Iran is days away from having a nuclear weapon. Days. And Trump has said, days away. And Trump has said he will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And what people tend to forget is, Donald Trump is the guy that issued new nuclear posture review, which, again, facilitated or legitimized or made American, as part of policy doctrine, preemptive attack using nuclear weapons against threats. And he also is the guy who changed the nuclear employment guidance to specifically bring in weapons that were purpose-built to take out Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Iran's nuclear infrastructure is underground. You're not coming in with a 500 kiloton bomb to collapse it or 150 kiloton bomb. You're coming in with a low-yield nuclear warhead, bunker buster, either a modification of the B-61 gravity bomb to be delivered by B-2 bombers, or the W-76-2 low-yield nuclear weapon delivered by the Trident submarine. But these weapons were put in there specifically to take out Iran's nuclear program. So we have a nuclear war plan already built by Donald Trump to take out Iran's nuclear infrastructure. And he has said he will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Now he's coming in to the presidency with Iran days away from having a nuclear weapon. And so anybody that thinks that this isn't going to be a problem hasn't been studying this. And so now the question is, what does Iran do? And that, does Iran go ahead and become a declared nuclear power like North Korea and say this is a reality? If you hit us now, we take out? Or does Iran work with Donald Trump to try and find an off-ramp that will spell the end of Iran's nuclear program? And there's a president right now in Iran that appears to be willing to make a deal. And this is the thing. Donald Trump hasn't bought into the Israeli "we must destroy the theocracy" policy. Donald Trump has made statements in the past that say that he is willing to lift sanctions and he's not out to remove the regime. He just wants to get rid of the nuclear weapons, that he'd like to see Iran part of the functioning economy. Whether he means that or not, and whether he can be trusted to carry that out with the people he's surrounded with, is another question altogether. But there is the new Iranian president is inclined to work with the West. He has gone on Iranian TV and criticized the decision to fire missiles into Israel, Operation True Promise 2. He said that he was in the middle of negotiations with the Europeans to get sanctions lifted, to begin the process of improving the economy. And then the missile attack came and those negotiations are gone. He's not inclined towards a policy of confrontation. And so I think we're going to see, if you remember, Donald Trump started his amazing, and I still think it was amazing, North Korean diplomacy, unprecedented face-to-face meetings. He began it with a speech at the United Nations, the Fire and Fury speech, where he all but threatened nuclear war against North Korea. This is his very crude way of implementing what he calls the peace through strength philosophy that underpins his regime, his government. And I think what we're going to see is Donald Trump making some very strong language very early on in his administration, all the while reaching out to the Iranians saying, I'm willing to cut a deal, but you got to put this nuclear program on the table. You cannot be, and if you even think about building nuclear weapons, understand the wrath of God will come down on your head. I'm not defending that approach. I'm just saying that's what I believe is going to happen.
Well, of course, he still is not even president of the United States, right? So January 20th is a long way away at this point. It feels, over a month away. And we have people like Anthony Blinken who are basically running the government in Washington, D.C. And of course the push from Benjamin Netanyahu saying, that we will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So in this month here during the Christmas holiday, will there be some sort of, I know this is a crystal ball question, but some sort of a preemptive attack on Iran to try to prevent this from actually happening, from them finalizing a nuclear weapon?
I don't believe so. But again, I mean, you never know with this administration, the Biden administration. Look, these are the people that, I mean, we're getting off topic here, but, there was a briefing that the CIA was banning about the White House and Congress about Russia and Russia's lowering of its nuclear threshold and whether or not Russia was serious about going forward and using nuclear weapons if red lines were crossed. And the CIA went in and the way the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post were portraying it is that the CIA said that Russia was bluffing. But I spoke to a very senior member of Congress who had received the briefing, and he said, no, that's not what the CIA said. The CIA said that the Russians aren't bluffing, and the problem is that the Biden administration said, that's okay, we're ready to have a nuclear war with Russia. And then you see, Thomas Buchanan's presentation at the Center for Strategic International Studies, where he says, "Yep, we're ready to have a nuclear exchange with Russia, and we plan on winning it." This is a sickness. This is insanity. The only rational thing he said in that whole thing is that we haven't been honest with the American people about what the consequences of our victory will be, meaning that America will be destroyed. Nothing will be the same. Everything you think America stands for today will be gone. Society will be turned upside down. And he said, maybe we need to be more honest with the American people about, what the consequences of this action will be. But they're ready right now to have a nuclear war with Russia. And so if that's their insanity level on there, now we transfer that. And so, yeah, you're right. There's no predicting. I mean, I come at it from a rational actor standpoint. We're late in an administration that has no mandate to go to war. But apparently they have no mandate to go to war with Russia, and they're ready to fight a nuclear war. So I don't know. I do think that they need to be careful because Iran isn't defeated. And if we start something, Israel is, as much as Israel's posturing right now, they're posturing on a foundation that was about to crumble. It's not like they've shored it up. There's still issues out there, serious issues. And if you trigger Iran and compel them to launch Operation True Promise 3, Israel could be destroyed. And so I do think that is what holds it back. I don't think the Biden administration is ready to carry out preemptive nuclear strikes against Iran, whereas a Trump administration may very well be prepared to do that.
Do you think we're at the most dangerous point in our history?
I've been saying that for some time now about the Russia situation. The Middle East now has gone insane. It's impossible for me to predict accurately what's going to happen because it's all so new. We just don't know how this is going to shake out. Turkey is the big wild card here. It's a NATO ally, but Erdogan has decided that he is the new sultan. He is the new, the caliph of a pan-Ottoman resurgence, and he's seriously talking about annexing significant portions of Syria into Turkey. And once you begin the process of redrawing that map, Mosul in Iraq comes into play. Azerbaijan, there could be some sort of a union, that could happen there. It's a changed world. And then Turkey's posture now starts to threaten not just Iran, but the Sunni Arab world. And then where's the United States in all this? Because we are, Turkey's a NATO ally. We've helped create this Sunni shield against the Shia crescent, but now we've got the Mad Turk running loose, and from this kind of chaos, many bad things can happen. So yeah, I think I think there's that old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. And we have been cursed like you wouldn't believe. I mean, this is fascinating from a strictly geopolitical, analytical standpoint. But then you realize that everything that makes it fascinating is a humanitarian disaster, either actually happening or in the making. And then it becomes just tragic. I mean, what's happening right now is just utter tragedy for hundreds of millions of people.
Right. It's fascinating academically, but at the heart of it is an absolute tragedy with the displaced and hundreds.
And the greatest tragedy of all is the ongoing genocide in Gaza. I mean, the fact is, nobody's talking about it right now. I mean, there's people, the people you'd expect to be talking about are talking about it, but in terms of successfully injecting the genocide into the mainstream dialogue, which was happening, that's not happening right now. We're talking about everything but that, and this, there will be an impact on this. I get in a lot of trouble when I say this, but I think the dream of a Palestinian homeland that may have existed in the last year is finished, and that means that these tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of Gazans who have died, martyred, for the cause of Palestine will have died in vain, because Israel is going to emerge from this, from October 7th, stronger than ever, and more right-wing than ever, more Zionistic than ever, and they'll have the full backing of an American government that is purpose-built to back Israel. This is a disaster for Palestine, for the cause of Palestine. This is a disaster for so many things, but that to me is the biggest tragedy of all. I understand, the fall of Assad brings out a lot of emotions on both sides. The people who said he's a butcher and he murdered people and killed people and all that, and they say now that nightmare is over. Other people that say Assad held back these head choppers who are now in charge, and there will be even greater tragedy for the Syrian people. That's all a tragedy, but the Palestinian cause captured the hearts of so many people around the world. For the first time, Palestine was being mainstreamed into the blood of the global community, and that's over. I don't see any recovery from this, and I know people get upset when I say that, but the fact of the matter is, no matter how much you support Palestine, you can't make a Palestinian state happen right now, given what it is, and you're talking another 50, 60 years before the region will be prepared to even think about Palestine, because you're going to be talking about everything but Palestine now. That's the danger of it, right? That Palestine needed to be on the front burner. It's off the front burner. It will soon be, not on the back burner, but in the refrigerator, and then we're going to put it out in the deep freeze, and it's just going to be out there in the, like that piece of meat that you bought that you thought you were going to thaw, but you didn't, and then now it's in the deep freezer in the garage, forgotten. And that's Palestine.
Yeah, sadly, I think you're absolutely right about that, especially now that the rebuilding projects are already in place and the billions of dollars to build condominiums and a beachfront community there. The United States will be helping all of that. So, yep. Scott Ritter, great to see you. Thank you for your analysis on all of this, and thank you. I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to hear. But you know better than anyone, and people need to hear this, as uncomfortable as it is, as we head into this next month here before President Trump takes office. Scott, great to see you. Hope you have a good Christmas.
Thank you, and you too. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, if we make it.